see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But.
We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. This is round number 5 of the season, coming to you today from Motorsports Arena, Oschersleben. My name is Ron Maunz, and alongside me working the comms and the cams is Josh Wilkie. And now, Josh, I've always felt that this track was a little bit overhated in the racing world, minus the terrible configuration of turn number 1 that we thankfully will not be using for today's race. This track is honestly alright in my book. How is it in yours?
Yeah, well, I've had the pleasure actually of driving around this track. I believe it was last season with the Weekend Warriors in, I believe it was the FF. And at first, this track is actually quite intimidating. The first complex of 1, 2, 3 corners there is very difficult, and you really have to wrap your mind around it. And then there's another section that's actually very similar to the 1, 2, 3 complex of corners later on in the lap as well. Again, sort of like last week, the rest of the lap is somewhat standard fare, straight lines to a stop, but you've got to get it all right. It's actually a deceivingly difficult course, really. You just really have to put the time in, and the person who kind of did the most practice laps around here and got it down pat is going to be probably our winner today.
And as you mentioned a few moments ago there, Josh, this track has been seen before in some Weekend Warriors schedules in the past. Really nice to see some lots of tracks that are usually mainstays in this series. And talking about mainstays, one of the mainstays in this series, and actually one of the admins here for the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, is someone who we've had the privilege to talk about on numerous occasions and have a chat with after these broadcasts on several occasions, that being Jim Brewster. And sadly, there's some news coming out of the Weekend Warriors world that Jim's wife Molly's father ended up passing away last night. So as we're still in the midst of this practice session, before we really get into all the action here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, we'll take a quick moment of silence. And as we still look at Jim driving around this racetrack, I want to say to Jim, if you're watching this broadcast later on, we're thinking of you, buddy. It's very tough to lose a member of your family. I unfortunately ended up dealing with the loss of my mother back when I was 7 years old, and that was nothing that anyone ever wants to go through. It's very tough to lose a family member, so Jim, we're certainly thinking of you and your entire family, and fingers crossed that we can see Jim end up in the victory lane here at Oschersleben when everything is said and done. He's certainly gotten close thus far this season, was involved in a fantastic photo finish at VIR earlier on this season for only round 2 at the VIR North configuration. But I think Josh is probably a good time talking about some of the fantastic races we've had thus far to probably move into the championship points as we've now reached the end of this practice session. Been a pretty good season to follow, a pretty exciting season as well, with points gaps and all that stuff pretty much microscopic in all of these classes. S1 has been pretty topsy-turvy thus far this season. Jason Green and Thor Tulo have been pretty much kicking everyone's butt in that class. However, Thor's off the back of a pretty bad race at Navarra just 1 week ago, where Jason Green, even though he had to spin towards the end of the race, he still ended up solidly inside the top 5, and so he's in the lead of the Spec 1 standings, about 20 points in front of Thor Tulo. Tulo, a real-life Formula Vee driver, and that's certainly going to be a nice battle to follow between now and the end of the season. You also got Guido Merzuki, our old pal Jim Brewster in 4th, and Adam Thompson, SMB's very own, rounding out your top 5 in the Spec 1 category. Got 2 points between Guido and Jim Brewster. That's going to be another fantastic championship fight to follow throughout the rest of this season. Gonna be moving on to Spec 2, which has been very hard to try and keep tabs on. Towards the beginning of the season, it was a story of dominance for Adam Thompson, but then he moved on to Spec 1. Then it became the Stefan Heemskerk show. He's now moved on to Spec 1 himself, so that's going to really make it a pretty good championship fight between Gary Walbold and Morn Human. They're currently P1 and P3 in the Spec 2 championship points, with about 13 points between the two of them coming into the 5th race of this championship. We got 13 rounds, so certainly a whole lot of time for those two drivers to give us one heck of a fight, and we could end up seeing the scenario in which Nick Tulo, Thor Tulo's dad, ends up taking the championship in Spec 2. I'm not sure if this has ever happened before in the Weekend Warriors world, having a father and a son win 2 separate championships in the same class, well, in the same series, but in different classes. Had to get the nomenclature there right. Just a couple of moments ago, had to rewire my brain a little bit to get that saying out correctly. But Josh, we're now in the midst of this qualifying session at this track, which, as you said, has a whole lot of challenge thrown in throughout it. A little bit of a shorter track, and one of the shorter tracks that we visited thus far this season at only 2.3 miles, but 14 corners, it is still a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a rather large track, actually, for these guys. The lap, I would imagine, is going to be a bit of a long one. There is definitely some technical spots in the very first part of the lap, and then sort of in the mid part of the lap as well. Other than that, there's going to be a lot of drafting and a lot of passing opportunities out there today, so it should be a pretty eventful race. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I think it's going to be a fun one for sure, and around a track which, as we've both kind of stated, is a little bit fun unless you end up in the barrier in which you are ready to delete this track off of your service. Recently became base content as well in the world of iRacing, so breathing a bit new life into this racetrack, which honestly I feel like it was a good call to turn it into base content, because I drove this track a whole lot on Project Cars 2 back in the day. That's a whole lot of challenge. However, it's not challenge that I would be willing to pay for myself. If you get like a really challenging track, you kind of need to make that base content as soon as it goes into the sim. Got my problem with Aragon, one of the other tracks in the iRacing platform. It's like giving yourself food poisoning for no obvious reason, but nevertheless, going to be riding on board with some of these drivers in the midst of this qualifying session. Going to get some lap times on the board. That's a very important corner, fittingly called McDonald's, so it's a good point that I brought up the food poisoning line a couple of moments ago. That's turn number 10 around this racetrack, a mightily important one for sure, because you go onto this long back straightaway, one of the longest straightaways on this lap, and a good overtaking opportunity in these draft-heavy Formula Vee race cars. Heading off through 11 and 12 as well, the Shell and Armin curves towards the end of this lap. Some pretty good opportunities as well, but also a very bad opportunity to have some sort of major mistake, which can certainly cost you a whole lot of time. And now here's a corner that I can never get right, whether it be in Project Cars 2 or in iRacing. That's turn number 14, the final corner on this racetrack. And usually people talk about the pit entry, which is on the outside there coming into the corner, but I think that corner is just generally tricky. The final corner is quite fittingly named Zeppelin Curve, which I think is a very fitting name because much like an actual Zeppelin, a small mistake will likely end up in you bursting into flames and crashing into a field. But as these drivers carry on in this qualifying session, some lap times are already being put on the board.
Yeah, let's see, we've got a pretty quick one here from Chris Montgomery, so he's up to the front. It's actually nice to see here. This is round 5 we're going into, and obviously the drivers are getting to know each other a little bit. I'm expecting we're going to see some more people near the front here. For the first 4 races that we had this season, hasn't really mixed up a lot at the top 5 or 6 guys, and it looks like we're getting that today here. We've got a few people out of place. We've got a few new people at the top. Let's hope we get one of those today and we get a new winner again.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a whole lot of storylines on our hands come time for the 30-minute race we have coming up today on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Got action every single weekend here on SMB. The action from all 3 of the Weekend Warrior series of Formula Vees you're seeing right now, plus the Formula Fords and Spec Racer Fords coming up tomorrow here exclusively on SMB. But looking at the action that we have today from the Formula Vees, looking like a pretty interesting qualifying session as it stands at the moment. Less than a tenth between Matthew Mercedes, who has a Spec 2 driver, is looking to try and do something that I don't think we've seen a driver do thus far this season, and grab the overall pole as a Spec 2 driver. The driver, the 780 car, currently on the top of that running order. However, our very own Adam Thompson got pretty close to him a couple of moments ago, just at a 1:43.254, which is not close enough to displace Mercedes. However, it's still going to be a pretty good fight for pole in this race, and that's a pretty big gap pace-wise between himself and Parvinder Ladar, another Spec 2 driver, currently second of the Spec 2 drivers, who's now down in 6th. But drivers still saying some lap times on the board. Gotta say, not looking too great for Jason Green, who's currently qualified down in 9th.
Yeah, it's a little different for Jason Green here. I think this is his first season in the Formula V's. Oschersleben being one of the more difficult tracks that you're going to run into. I think this section here, actually very similar to the 1, 2, 3 set of corners actually in the beginning of the lap right there, almost identical to it. Very difficult to get through properly. But yeah, I think that we're probably going to see Jason Green move forward here during the race, even though he didn't qualify so well, or has not qualified so well here yet. He races very well, and he's got very good race craft and so on as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him move forward as we get into the race here.
And I will bring up this saying that I bring up a whole lot when it comes to these Formula V races. It's pretty much just a 100-mile-an-hour game of leapfrog. And Josh, I think if you had $1 for every single time I've said that on a broadcast with you for Formula V's, you'd probably be able to buy half of the cars on the grid and probably the racetrack as well. But really, it's a pretty accurate statement, because with the draft, I think I've said this quote a lot as well, it's like there's a vacuum cleaner attached to these race cars, and you just have such a powerful draft. There's a very good reason why the other practice days that these drivers have, the night before these races on Friday nights on iRacing, they call it the draft party for a very good reason, because that's pretty much all these races are. Of course, you do have to have a whole lot of skill to wheel these race cars around as fast as they are, but just keeping in that draft is going to be such an important factor in deciding who's going to be victorious in this race today. There was some pretty good flat-out blasts, including one right towards the end of the lap. That's going to be a pretty good storyline. Simon Mayer, a driver who I've seen a whole lot of in the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warrior Series. Haven't seen too much of him here in the FVs. However, he is trying to do something quite impressive and grab the pole in this race. Currently at a 1:43.153, just a smidge in front of Matthew Mercedes, who's still in P2, and Adam Thompson slotted in 3rd at the moment, has yet to improve on that lap time he set a couple of minutes ago. But halfway through this qualifying session now, and it's looking like a pretty intriguing and very close battle for the pole.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually had the pleasure of racing Simon a few times there in the other 2 leagues, and he's definitely a good driver. He's going to definitely put the screws to you when he thinks he can, and it looks like he's right out there at the front here too. And we have an S2 driver again in the top 3, so that's pretty interesting here. We got a pretty mixed field at the top. Got an S2 in 2nd and in 5th place here with only a few minutes left to go in qualifying.
Ooh, as a former Spec 2 driver, Stefan Heemskerk jumps up to the front, trying to put on a show in his debut in the Spec 1 category. Stefan Heemskerk in that re-numbered 96 car, he is on the provisional pole, jumping in front of Mayer and Mercedes at a 1 minute 43.048 to the driver who I believe is making his Weekend Warriors debut just as is in this Formula Vee Weekend Warriors season. Has been mightily impressive thus far. He's off the back of some fantastic results, off the back of 2 straight victories in the Spec 2 category. Gotta say, he's definitely giving himself a whole lot of challenge jumping class mid-season, but I mean, Josh, you have some pretty good experience dominating Spec 2 in some of these series, so I guess he wanted a bit more of a challenge and was itching to try and race with some of the big dogs in Spec 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, you know, depending on the season and depending on the track and sort of the time of season and stuff like that, the two fields can either be a little bit stacked or a little bit not stacked. And at the moment in S2, looks like we've got a pretty full field here in S2, but clearly Heemskerk had the pace, so he decided to move up to S1, which I think is the right decision for him. But yeah, on my side of things there, yes, the S2 category in the other 2 leagues is a little bit light at the moment. So I'm assuming come wintertime, we're going to get some more S2 drivers in there, and the competition's going to get a little stiffer. But right now, in the Vs, we got a pretty good split here between S1 and S2.
And I gotta say, with the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors series, we've seen this a whole lot in the broadcasts of this series that have been here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Usually see a bit more of a split when it comes to the Spec 1 racers compared to the Spec 2. This series is a little bit odd in the sense that we have seen a whole lot of Spec 2 drivers win thus far this season. Trent Kramer, who we thought was Spec 2, was actually a Spec 1 driver, but either way, he was very fast 1 week ago. Navarra ended up taking the overall victory in that race, but harkening my mind back to the final race of last season, where Chris Montgomery, who at that point in time was still in Spec 2, ended up being victorious over the season champion, that being Jesus Rodriguez, who I think is a good storyline to follow as well. He's currently qualified 11th at this point in time at 143.744. He's had a pretty rough start to this season, hasn't he, Josh? So maybe the reigning champion running into a little bit of trouble come at the very early stages of this season.
Yeah, we've had a few pretty big incidents here in the first couple races. Some unfortunate things, some things that were obviously at the fault of the driver and so on, and some that were outside of their control. And I expect no different again today. As you were mentioning here, you're going to get a pretty good mix, I think, between the S2 and the S1 drivers in this particular class of car, just because of the way that it drives and because it drafts, like you were mentioning. Every once in a while, you can have somebody in 8th place, 9th place on the last lap, and they can end up in 1st. And it doesn't matter if they're S1 or S2. They just got a good draft down the straight. There's nothing anybody could do about it, and that's it. So it makes it really fun, and it makes it very competitive, and that's why slow cars like this are so much fun.
Yeah, it just gives us such a compelling storyline to follow throughout this season, and really storylines are just a fantastic thing to have on broadcast, period. I mean, there's another series on a different broadcaster that we will not mention by name, with it's not really a 2-class series. However, there's a certain class of drivers that we always like to keep their eyes on, because they're just driving with publicly rented simulators that you can get, so we always like to keep tabs on that so-called category that we like to assign. Mike McConnell's been stopped out there on the racetrack for a while.
Interesting.
For someone like me who has dyslexia, you'd expect him to stop at the McDonald's corner, considering his name is McConnell, and occasionally someone with dyslexia like myself can make up that mistake. But no, he stopped on the start-finish straightaway, currently qualified 11th. I'm not sure if he has exhausted his qualifying laps that he is allowed, because of course in this series, got a 15-minute long qualifying session and only 4 laps to get the job done. However, I think he still has some laps in his back pocket. He's been stopped there for a while, so maybe just taking a small little break, trying to figure out where the restroom is in the pit building here at Oschersleben.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on there with McConnell. Perhaps he had to jump out of the rig for a minute and he just didn't have time to zap himself to the pit. But he looks like he's fair enough out of the way there that he's not bothering anybody, so it shouldn't be a problem.
And thankfully in this series, it's solo qualifying, so all the drivers have the racetrack to themselves, which as a driver can be very fun at times when you're trying to put in some quick laps, but for a driver like me, that can be a little bit boring. I remember going to an indoor go-kart track right outside the city of Philadelphia, and I used to just go there with a bunch of the people from the city that didn't really know what they were doing, and I just told my dad one day, I just want to be here to pass people, and that's pretty much all I said. But, I mean, sometimes you want to have the racetrack to yourself, and certainly McConnell happy that he has a racetrack to himself. Otherwise, we'd have a bit more of an autocross track going down that start-finish straightaway with McConnell's stopped car. I don't know, maybe if we had full course yellows in the series and had like a choose cone rule like NASCAR does, and the drivers had to pick their lane, we would have to have a choose cone Formula V out there. I mean, they are kind of cone-shaped, if you would, just paint one of those bright orange, and I mean, I think you'd be golden, but nevertheless, this qualifying session slowly drawing to a close. Parvin and Ladar, who are following right now in the Bada Bing, always a nice team name to say, the 432 car. He's currently qualified in 16th. A little bit farther up the road from some of the other Spec 2 drivers. One of the other Spec 2 drivers, that being Joshua Justice, who we're following right now. Actually, no, he's a Spec 1 driver. My apologies. So that small little green ticker right next to his name, but that just indicates that we are following him. He's a Spec 1 driver, currently qualified in 29th. He's a driver who I believe has had some experience driving some Formula Vs in real life, usually a Spec Racer 4 driver, and you get to see him on the Spec Racer 4 Weekend Warriors here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. But I was going to mention the driver currently qualified in lucky number P13, that being Brian Stasinski, who last time out here for the Formula V Weekend Warriors was racing inside a trailer at this year's SCCA National Championship runoffs up there in Road America, and he was sweating like a dog apparently, considering that they had to close the door because it was so windy up there in Road America. So I guess like a sim racing sauna sort of effect. That doesn't seem medically advisable at all. That does not seem like a good idea in any way, shape, or form. But nevertheless, this qualifying session has now been drawn to a close. I'm going to get the starting grid loaded up for you in just a couple of moments' time. A short pace lap, so I'm going to try and gun through this as quickly as possible. Stefan Heemskerk in his Spec 1 debut. Got to be grabbing the pole in this race in the number 96 car. He's going to be joined on the front row by hometown hero Simon Mayer. Thor Tula going to be starting this race in third. Matthew Mercedes, the American, in the 780 car for Spec 2. Going to be starting this race in fourth overall. Adam Thompson, the former Spec 2 driver, in fifth. Parvin and Ladar going to be starting in 6th. Chris Montgomery in 7th. Guido Marzuki in P8. And then in P9, it is going to be Jason Green, Jason Perry, going to make it an all-Jason 5th row. Michael McConnell, who we saw parked on the start-finish line, going to be starting in 11th. Jesus Rodriguez, the reigning Spec 1 champion in the series, will be in 12th. Brian Stasinski, who we were just talking about, going to be starting in P13. Alan Degassis is going to join him on that row. Andrew Love and David Fitzgerald are going to start right behind Jim Brewster in 17th. Jeff Jacobson in P18. Dan Stasinski in P19, Hank Mell in P20, Brad Cathcar in P21, Matthias Marin in 22nd. Russ Telker going to be starting this race in 23rd. Jason Grider going to join him on that 12th row. And looking throughout the rest of the field, we have Michael Lattarulo in 25th, Joshua Flores in 26th, Nick Tulo in 27th, Gary Wolbald in 28th, Joshua Justice in 29th, Travis Rail in 30th, Wayne Buttermore in 31st, and Javier Repules, I probably killed that pronunciation, he is going to be starting in 23rd, and I believe that will be the last starter that we have in this race, with Repules not setting a qualifying time. And now as we begin this pace lap, Josh, if you had one word to describe the thing that you're looking at for in this 30-minute race, what would that one word be?
Drafting.
There we go. Fair enough. Thank you very much, Josh. I think that's honestly good point to bring up, because the drafting is such a big factor in these Formula V races, and even around a track like this where you've got a whole lot of tight twisties, still got to worry about the draft and just being there towards the end of these races. We don't have a pit stop to worry about or anything like that. It is just 30 minutes of balls to the wall, flat out racing action, and it's set to begin in just a couple of moments time. The field is now in the hands of our pole sitter Stefan Heemskerk. The green flag's down. The drivers are on their way. The smoke going up in the air as the drivers are banging through the gears, looking like a pretty aggressive start. I believe Parvin and Ladar nearly going for some lawn mowing, heading down the start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. But look at these drivers battling hard. Look at a move from Thor Tulo down the inside, heading into the first corner, making a little bit of contact. But Heemskerk is going around. Heemskerk going to keep it on the asphalt. However, Stefan Heemskerk looking to try and impress in his debut in Spec 1, having a horrendous start as Tula went for a balls-to-the-wall, ballsy move down the inside, heading off into turn number 1. He's now taking the lead. Simon Mayer in the number 5 right behind him is going to be slotted in second, with Parvin Ladar, the driver that had the very aggressive start.
We got Mayer dropping now as well.
Mayer dropping down. Did he possibly have a disconnect?
I think he disconnected, yep.
Oh no, don't tell me that. Boy, it's always a factor in iRacing having connection issues, but those serial box Wi-Fi routers biting Simon Mayer early on.
Yeah, that's too bad. You know, it's one of those things we have, you know, race cars have technicals. You have bad weekends at the track, and it looks like Simon Mayer is having a bad weekend at the track here digitally. Unfortunately, we will double check there and make sure that he did get disconnected, but he certainly fell down the order right to the back there.
Yeah, looking to see. I think he is still there in sim. However, he is not out there on the racetrack at this point in time. Looking at that, that is a beautiful move from Jason Perry to take P3, the final overall podium spot from Matthew Mercedes. Now it looks like Adam Thompson got to try and go for the move, heading around the outside of turn number 13. Thankfully for him, he's not getting bit out by the bad luck around turn number 13. However, some of these drivers are still going around the outside of each other. Jesus Rodriguez with a pretty good start. Thortula on the number 90 car going to complete lap 1 in the lead of this race. But outside that incident for Mayer and the one for Heemskerk, as he's now just careened down the running order, currently slotted in 20th. Outside those two, though, pretty clean start here at Oschersleben, Josh.
Yeah, great. It's good to see Jason Perry moving up here. I know he had a bad week last week there. He qualified so well at the last track and then unfortunately just had a bad spin right at the beginning of the lap on, I believe it was even lap 1, corner 1 there. So it's good to see him up in 3rd place here. Hopefully he can move forward a little bit. And then we just have a hornet's nest behind that of the rest of the drivers here. And I assume this is going to stay this way for a while. We got a lot of cars out there today.
Yeah, the rest of the pack is looking absolutely hungry. One driver that's trying to get a move done is Green. He's side by side with the Gassis right behind that fight that we were following involving Jesus Rodriguez and Chris Montgomery. But at this point in time, Green struggling a little bit, hasn't made up any sort of time. And I'm curious as to whether or not the coach extraordinaire, as he's called on the Racing Line podcast, which I was very happy to appear on this past week with our very own Josh Wilkie there as well. But at this point, he's struggling to try and make his way up the running order. I'm curious as to whether or not this is a pace-related issue, or if he's just trying to play the patient game around. Oh boy, around a racetrack like this, he can get into some sort of difficulties. And I think maybe me mentioning the word patience in this series, the iRacing gods trying to strangle me after that because my voice nearly gave out right as I mentioned the word patience, which is something that is usually not in these drivers' vocabularies.
Yeah, it's definitely one thing. Actually, it's a good word to have out here today is some patience for sure. You know, in any of these cars, in any sort of a drafting slow car, you have to have patience. You have to know when to make the move and maybe even more importantly, when not to make the move. You need to carry a really big sword, but need to keep it sheathed and pull it out only when you need it. And that's going to make it so that you don't make a bad move or you end up in a bad spot. Like we've seen in a couple of the previous races here, and we've had some big accidents because of some of those dives or because of some of those ill-thought moves.
Yeah, thankfully early on into this race, bearing in mind we just clicked over 4 minutes into this half-an-hour affair here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, haven't seen a driver go into low Earth orbit yet, knowing by look, I probably just jinxed it. Actually, I say that, though, considering what happened to Mayer at the very beginning of the race, I think he got abducted by a UFO, so I guess we have had some aerial acrobatics very early on into this race, but not as a result of any sort of collision. However, these drivers are still battling hard. Szynski shuffled back after Jacobson went for a move on him, and Szynski nearly made contact with another Spec 2 competitor, that being Andrew Love, as they were heading down into the triple of turn number 4, 5, and 6. That's such a tricky section because it feels like you're threading the eye of the needle as much as you want to try and apex turn 4, 5, and 6. You got to worry about it. I think it's called the carousel of turn number 7. That is a corner that usually sneaks up on these drivers quite quickly and can play a big role in how battles shake out. But looking at a battle right now involving Perry and Thompson. Thompson gets a move done in spectacular fashion, heading through 11 and 12. That was a slick move there, Adam. Well done. Jason Perry, who he's battling with, has had a pretty good start to this race, unlike his other Jason compatriot, shall we say, that started just towards the tail end of the top 10, that being Jason Green. Perry, meanwhile, he's made up 6 spots compared to Green, who at this point in time has only made up 1. So a little bit of a tale of two halves with those two drivers, and Perry may still be feeling racy as he is within striking distance of Thompson, heading down into turn number 1 and 2, threading the eye of the needle with the needle attached to a Saturn V rocket, traveling at escape velocity is the name of the game, heading off through turn number 1 and 2. These drivers making it through clean and still getting some slick moves done.
Yeah, absolutely. That first 1, 2, 3 complex, actually not a bad analogy there with that one. There really is only one line through there. And kind of the way you do it is just take as much speed as you possibly can into the first part of it and then sort the next 2 corners out. And that's basically how that corner works. Maybe not quite that here willy-nilly, but very close to it. and there's definitely only one line through there, and if you try to pass, it's just never going to work out. And then this section as well, very similar to the 1-2-3 complex again, so you got to wrap it up twice in a lap there and just make sure that you get it just right through both of those sections.
And you know, I said the comment a couple of moments ago about the fact we haven't had aerial acrobatics. I think something happened to Russ Telker at the very beginning of the race, and based off what he's saying in the YouTube chat of this broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting today, I think we may have had a flip on our hands. We'll touch on that in a little bit. Meanwhile, Jesus Rodriguez trying to get a move done down the inside. Jason Perry heading off into turn number 11. Looks like those two drivers are going to single file out with some heroics from Perry, trying to lose as little time as possible, but Rodriguez in the 76 go at him, hang down into turn 13. They make contact. Side pod to wheel between the two of those drivers heading off through turn number 13, and they look very close to contact again, heading through the final corner of 14. These drivers should really yield the warning that I said at the very beginning of the show. You don't want to have any sort of drama heading through Zeppelin Curve, otherwise you're going to end up crashing into a field in a ball of flames in southern New Jersey. Side by side, heading down into turn number 1. Perry, is he going to back out of it? Yes, he will. Jesus Rodriguez, as much as Perry may have had the pace earlier on, Jesus Rodriguez just has that ambition. We mentioned earlier on that Jesus Rodriguez has had a pretty rough start for the reigning Spec 1 champion, who won it in convincing fashion. So the driver of the number 76 car has had a pretty rough start to this season, but looking to try and turn things around here at Oschersleben.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Jesus is a great driver. He has a tendency, though, to really, really bite off every single corner no matter what, and it just brings him backwards in the pack. I've had to race him a few times now, and he's a great driver, and he's definitely fast out there, but he has a tendency to just attack. So does Jason Perry at times as well. So it's actually pretty impressive that they both worked it out there. It looks like maybe Jesus is starting to pull away a little bit right now, and that worked out for him this time. So the aggressive can work out.
I think we could probably describe the fight between those two as what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. So those two managing to sort it out well. However, they lost a buttload of time to the back of Adam Thompson, who is now in P3. Pretty uncontested podium position as it stands at the moment, with well over a second and a half separating those two drivers. Actually, no, it's only 1 second. It's about a second and a half between Parvinder Ladar, who's slotted in P2, and Adam Thompson, who runs in that final podium position. There's Adam right there in the 144 car, and you can catch Adam on the racing line in a couple of weeks' time. He's working the night shift because Uncle Sam has asked him to, but he'll be back on there instead. Our buddy Josh Wilkie is going to be on there for at least the next couple of weeks, at least this past week. So
we'll fill in for a few weeks.
There we go. Gives you more of a reason to tune into the racing line only on the Ray Esports Racing YouTube channel. We're looking at the racing involving Chris Montgomery. He's now trying to chase down Perry, who's lost out a little bit of time to the back of Jesus Rodriguez. Meanwhile, Szynski dropping down the running order. I could see him off the circuit hang through turn number 1. So I'm not sure what happened to him. I think we're going to have to take a look at a replay to see what happened to Brian. He was running, I believe, in 4th in the Spec 2 category, probably about 15th overall. However, he's lost out on a whole boatload of time. The driver of the 841 car having a moment, hang off through 1 and 2.
Ooh, looks like he just got it wrong going into there. Went a little bit too narrow, and then it shot him out wide, unfortunately, all by himself.
Yeah, so that's the first major bit of drama that we've seen in a little bit of time after that incident involving Heemskerk at the very beginning of the race. And I'm curious, Josh, you could possibly find a replay to see what happened there with Heemskerk at the very beginning, looking at the battling a little bit farther in the back with Rapules, who is out there on the racetrack, it must be said, so the driver did not take qualifying time. However, he's out there, the newcomer to the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors world, so nice to see him running out there on the racetrack, currently slotted in 23rd. Maybe a moment involving Fitzgerald. I think he's actually just lost out on the spot there. So nothing major going on there. No major sort of incident. Looking at a major move from Josh Justice. Major Stone trying to get it done. Heading down into turn number 11. That was slick, trying to get past Michael Lattarulo and doing so successfully.
Yeah, very nice move there down the inside. Well done. Well done. Joshua Justice here. He'd probably be, later in the season, he's going to move up the field a little bit more here. He's very quick driver in the SRFs and the FFs, and I would imagine that he's going to get his hands around this thing pretty quickly and start moving to the front.
Yeah, slowly
we have a
putting his
replay here
nose
of
to the
Heemskerk from the beginning here quickly.
Take a look at this to see the driver that started this race from the pole dropping down the running order just as quickly as things began. That's such a heartbreaker for Heemskerk as well. You can see that side-by-side action. And really, I gotta say, Heemskerk got a little bit spooked with Thortulo down the inside of him. We're gonna take a look at another angle, a better angle. I tried to merge those words into each other a couple of moments ago. But riding on board with Heemskerk, made a little bit of contact with Tulo, so it's small little bit of contact, nothing major for Tulo. However, it upset Heemskerk and sent him into the path of the side pod of Harvinder Ladar, and I think he just decided to yank the wheel to avoid any sort of major crash at the front of the field at the very beginning of the race. So a little bit of a sacrifice there must be said from our Coulson.
Yeah, once again, you know, that 1, 2, 3 complex of the first section of corners there is very difficult, and you really got to be kind of single file through it. And unfortunately, they just overlapped slightly right at the or at the beginning of the corner there, and had a little touch, and it sent him wide. And unfortunately, he had to go to the back, but he's making his way back up through the field. He's back up to 15th already.
Yeah, well done to him. We'll keep our tabs on that to see how things shake out for him in the final 18 minutes of this race. Rodriguez and Thompson were just battling for the final podium spots, so despite the fact that that gap had ballooned, it virtually diminished in the span of a couple of laps as those two are now battling hard. Looking at another battle, this one involving Jason Green, so Green finally trying to make up some positions, getting a move done on Mercedes, heading off into turn number 1. He's involved in a fight with himself. Mercedes, as I just mentioned, Guido Marzucchi involved in that fight along with Chris Montgomery running in the P6 position, and I think Green may need to force the issue here a little bit as the likes of Perry, Thompson, and Rodriguez are starting to pull away.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually impressed here. Montgomery and Green have both made their way forward here. They race each other all the time in all of these classes, FV, SRF, all of them. So they know each other pretty well. They're going to play ball with each other, I would think. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they kind of attach to each other here and start moving forward a little bit, see if they can't catch up to Jason, Perry, and Adam. Meanwhile, we got Adam out here kind of showing everybody how it's done. We did get Jesus past him in the last little bit. We'll see if we can't find a replay for that.
We'll hopefully get that replay. Fingers crossed. I kind of feel bad for you, Josh, trying to find replays in this series with a replay view that you have. It's like trying to find one minnow in a lake, essentially. That's the only way that I could really describe it. Yeah. It's very difficult. It's like trying to find the needle in a haystack, but Rodriguez getting that move done looked like it was just fairly textbook stuff heading down the back straightaway.
Yeah, pretty textbook pass there. Easy draft. I wouldn't be surprised if Adam returns the favor here, and if they don't keep doing that, back and forth for a few laps in a row. That's kind of how it's played around here, honestly. If you do it just right, you'll be able to move forward. If you can leapfrog each other on the straights and not slow each other down in the corners, that's how you move forward. And if they're smart, that's what they're going to do here, and see if they can't catch up to those leaders.
Yeah, it looks like that game of leapfrog between the two of them is continuing, as even though they were going side by side down that start-finish straightaway and Thompson got that move done to jump his way back up into P3, they didn't lose out on a spot to Jason Perry, who is still within striking distance of these two. Jason Perry was involved in a pretty good finish with himself and Jason Green at the Mid-Ohio round for the third race of the championship. So he's no slouch in these Formula V's, and trying to prove that at this point in time, as it looks like these three are going to try and work together. Teamwork can make the dream work at times. I've definitely read that in a fortune cookie before. However, they've got a pretty big hill to climb to catch up to the likes of Harvinder Ladar and Thortulo. I think their main hope at this point in time is not to come together, as Perry was coming in like a bat out of hell into turn number 7, and that brought Chris Montgomery, the number 33 car, into this fight. I mean, that could have been the reason why Perry was extra late on the brakes heading down into the 7th corner around this racetrack. But I think at this point in time, the pack of Thompson, Rodriguez, Perry, and Montgomery probably hoping that these two, Tulo and Ladar, begin to just scrap and claw like it's going out of style, because I think that's their only hope of closing up that gap.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Ron. We got some pace out here out front, and both of them are thinking in the car, and they're trying to pull away, clearly. They're not fighting each other. They're using the draft, and they're trying to get away here. So I would be surprised if these guys can catch them. That said, who knows? We have a big pack of cars here behind. There'll be a big draft if they can all put it together, and they're definitely capable of catching these guys if they can put it together. But I have a feeling that Perry and Jesus are going to get into a battle here, maybe even Thompson and Jesus, and they're probably going to slip back a little bit. But we should get a good race out of it.
I think we've already got that great racing action going on right now, looking at all these drivers running line astern, and Perry nearly doing some rally action heading off into turn number 1 and 2, trying to get a move done down the inside of Rodriguez, and gets it done successfully. Rodriguez now going to be relegated a little bit farther down, unless he has anything to say about heading off into Hasselroder of turn number 3. But because of that, the 3-car fight that was behind them, involving Green, Mercedes, and Marzuki, this has now turned into an absolute hornet's nest. We've got Thompson, Perry, Rodriguez, Montgomery, Green, Mercedes, and Marzuki. 7 cars in one pack in these Formula V Weekend Warriors races. It's not out of character with this series. This series always puts on some awesome action. That gives you more reason to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell here on SMB so you never miss a thing. But even though it's not anything shocking to come from this series, it still just blows my socks off every single time I see it, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just amazing to see these guys all link up and start drafting in these big draft snakes like this, and it just makes it so exciting. You never know what's going to happen. The guy at the back could be at the front in a blink, so it's always fun to watch this happen. And we'll see if maybe this pack can catch up to the front. I have a feeling they're going to be battling each other, and these guys in the front are just going to continue to pull away, however.
You'll have to see how this shakes out. Gotta say, Marzuki and Mercedes have lost out a little bit of time. I think they were battling as now Marzuki is slotted in P8 and Mercedes dropped back a little bit. Possibly even a mistake involving Mercedes. Let me try that one again. A mistake involving Mercedes. A mistake is a mistake involving Mercedes. I'm not sure if that's the reason why he's lost out on a little bit of time, but still looking at that pack, it is insane. Rodriguez down the inside, hang off it to turn number 1, trying to get back at Jason Perry after their side-by-side 1 lap ago around this very corner, but roles reversed this time. It's now Rodriguez, the one that's attacking Perry, and they're going to be side-by-side again, heading down into turn number 3, but look at Montgomery and Green right behind. They're battling too. Look at Rodriguez on that inside line, though, trying to push Perry off and say, like, hey, this is my spot and my spot alone. Don't try messing with me. Otherwise, I'm going to mess with you right back. They're still side by side, heading off through 4, 5, and 6. Then they head off into the carousel, turn number 7. And this is nearly where we saw Jason Perry have a major moment earlier on. He's so late on the brakes. That's such a tricky corner because it gives you so many different opportunities of different lines to run. Jason Green doesn't want to run that line, though. Very wide on corner exit. That's going to stand up a little bit poorly, heading through the fast 8 and 9 chicane before we go onto this back straightaway after negotiating turn number 10. But Thompson at this point in time still the lead car of this train, and as a joke I've done many times on the broadcast, I would grab my harmonica and start making train noises. However, it's not within arm's reach.
That's too bad. I've definitely heard the harmonica come out a few times. Yeah, unfortunately, it looks there. We got Jason Perry and Jesus racing really nice and clean here. Just amazing racing between those two. And unfortunately, it looks like Jason Green just got kind of hung out to dry there, unfortunately. Got pushed a bit wide by the pack and has dropped a position or two. But I have a feeling he's going to make his way forward as well. This whole pack of cars here, as you can see, has kind of slowed down a little bit and brought Guido into the mix here as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep fighting like this, if we end up with that pack of DeGassis and everybody behind them right on the back of these guys as well.
As much as broadcasters usually don't like to leave their broadcasting perch, I feel like I had to do it this time because we've got trains up and down the grid. Here's another one involving Brewster. He's side by side with McConnell heading through turn number 2. So looking at this fight continuing right behind DeGassis is now the lead car of this train, but this is looking tense heading down into turn number 3, and that is way too much harmonica that should ever come out on broadcast here on SMB. So as I put that away, we're still gonna look at this fight with Andrew Love now getting in the midst of this. All these drivers feeling really dicey, and we're coming to the final 10 minutes of this race, Josh, so I think these drivers are definitely feeling a bit more racy, a bit more aggressive, and maybe gonna break those elbows out.
Yeah, I'd say we're pretty well settled in now. Everybody knows their pace. They know the guy they're beside. They're starting to think, you know what, I think I'm faster than you. They're going to see if they can't break the pack and go forward. And this is generally when we see sparks fly. So we do have, 2 or 3 big trains of cars all formed up here. And I would imagine that in the next little bit, we are going to see some fireworks.
Oh, fireworks indeed, and fingers crossed that the fireworks are the fireworks celebrating an awesome battle, and not the fireworks of a car absolutely exploding. I'm not going to make another Zeppelin joke on this broadcast because that would be a little bit in poor taste. I felt bad about the first one. I felt even worse about the second one. The third one, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, even though that happened about 50 miles away from where I live. But nevertheless, Jason Perry, who are following right now in 5th, as Thompson and Rodriguez continue that leapfrog game between the two of them. They're still playing a dangerous game, though, with this, because even though they've got down to a science, if they get a little bit more risky, that is going to end in tears, because this pack is looking incredibly hungry behind. Montgomery and Green, they just went side by side. Montgomery getting that move done to slip his way up into 6th. Rodriguez, meanwhile, receiving a little bit of a bump draft nearly from Thompson, heading down into turn number 3. This is looking like an intense fight, and it may continue here. Coming out of turn number 3, Rodriguez mega sideways and mega wide coming out of the corner. That's the opportunity that Thompson needs to get this move done for the final podium spots. Probably a little bit earlier than both of those drivers had in mind, but he needs to take those runs and take those opportunities when he can. At this point in time, their teamwork has not worked out, as Tulo and Ladar are still leading this pack by about 3.5 seconds. So at this point, if you're one of these drivers, I don't know about you, Josh, but I would be throwing caution to the winds and saying, screw it, we're not going to be battling for the win. We're going to be battling for that final podium position. And instead of having 3 podium positions to battle with, I only have 1. So need to go for the moves. Looks like all these drivers going to go for the moves. Rodriguez and Thompson nearly came to blows, with Rodriguez jolting out of the slipstream of Thompson, hang down that back straightaway into turn number 11. Tried to go for the move, but it's not going to work out. Rodriguez, meanwhile, maybe going to lose out on a spot to Perry. Perry, meanwhile, about to lose out on a spot to Montgomery, heading down into turn number 13. This battle is oh so intense, I can barely spit the right words out to describe it.
Yeah, there is a lot going on out there for sure, and you got to know as a driver there is a lot going on in your mind right now as well. The senses are flying. You have a car in front of you, a car behind you. You're not sure if Buddy's a little bit faster. Does he have the draft? Doesn't he have the draft? And here we go into T1 3 wide again, so it's always going to be a bit of a mind bender for sure.
Mind bender indeed for both us in the commentary booth and the drivers out there on the racetrack. We've described this series in the past as being like a 100-mile-an-hour game of leapfrog. It's more so like a 100-mile-an-hour game of chess as well, especially when it comes to the end of these races. When I say chess there, I think I meant the word chess. Nevertheless, it's a very quick game of chess, because you have to employ a whole lot of strategy to be like, okay, here's when I want to go for the moves. Here's when I want to be a bit more aggressive. Jason Green trying to be a little bit aggressive. Looked like he was going to try and put all 4 wheels off into the dirt to get past Perry, but I think he's going to put all 4 wheels off into the runoff area and nearly lose out on a spot on Marzuki, heading through 4, 5, and 6 off into turn number 7. But looking at this fight, Rodriguez is holding on to P3. The real question is, how long will he be able to hold it out for? And if we see a scenario in which Thortulo and Parvinder Ladar, who are leading both their classes and running P1 and P2 overall, if they come to blows, we're going to have that Rodriguez, Thompson, Montgomery, Perry, Green, and Marzuki fight turn into the battle for the win, and I don't think my voice could take that.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. That's a good point. All that has to happen here is a little touch up front. That's it. One little corner, one little mess up from those guys up front, and these guys are right on their butts, and we have a huge train again all of a sudden. Not that we don't already have two big trains, but definitely up for the front there. So even though it looks like a bit of a gap here, that can reduce real fast, especially when you have guys like this behind you that are just chomping at the bit to get up there.
And these drivers are feeling oh so racy. Oh, I think there's a little bit of drama hanging through turn number 14 a couple of moments ago. Just saw some cars going all farther in the back of shot. I think Wayne Buttermore may have been involved in that. Heemskirk, possibly another tragic blow to Heemskirk, looking to try and impress in his first ever race as a Spec 1 driver here in the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Series. He's just been struck by falling anvil after falling anvil in this half-an-hour-long race that we're only 25 minutes into. Gotta take a look at a replay to see this. Yeah, Jacobson involved in that. Thank you very much, Josh, for this replay. Oh boy, Heemskirk going upside down.
And he is on his lid. Yep, that's not something you see every day from the V's, right? It takes a pretty good hit to flip a V, so that was definitely tire-to-tire contact, just not giving each other the room needed there, and ended up upside down.
Perfect time for me to start coughing, but take a look at another angle of that Heemskirk incident. Oh boy, that was such a big amount of air that he can achieve in these Formula V's, and bing, there he goes, and then off into the grass and gravel, lands head first. That was a huge collision for Stefan Heemskerk, and that's going to take him out of contention. Gotta say though, if you're gonna crash out of a race, you gotta do it like that. Thompson and Rodriguez side by side, and Green going for a near spin. Did he hit the wall? Did he go for a spin? Or did he keep that car going in a straight line? I don't think he did. He's losing out on a spot to Mercedes. So Green having a major sideways snap, heading through turn number 11. Looks like he kept it out of the barrier, I believe, as he's now rejoined the race, albeit down in 9th. The Green having a major moment in the number 1 car, certainly not feeling number 1 after that moment. And I think the curb may have had something to do with it. No, it was just rear locking, trying to avoid contact with himself and Perry.
Yeah, just a bit of avoidance there. Is actually some very good avoidance from Jason Green there, not to run into the back of Jason Perry. It looks like the front guys there were just battling, and they kind of woed everybody up a bit, kind of caught him out, but he was able to avoid it, and he's back.
Rodriguez and Thompson. Rodriguez and Thompson just came to blows heading through turn number 2. That's going to send this pack, which was already chaotic, into absolute pandemonium. Rodriguez just got taken out of it. He's still running in this race, albeit down in 7th. That's going to take him out of contention, and unless there's some sort of major drama between now and the end of this race, it looks like it's going to turn into a 4-car pack, with Montgomery now holding on to that final podium spot. Not sure what in the world happened there with Thompson and Rodriguez heading through the first few corners of this lap. Their game of leapfrog was oh so risky, and I think they finally came to blows heading off through Hotel of turn number 2 just a few moments ago. Rodriguez is now taken out of this fight. I'm curious if there's any damage on Thompson's car. Not a Thompson on damage car. I'm not even sure if that's a correct phrase at all. But Thompson running in 4th in the 144 machine. I'm curious if there's any sort of damage on his race car, because that would certainly be music to the ears of Chris Montgomery, because he's running in that final podium spot, and I gotta say that gap was increasing. However, they're now going to be side by side heading through turn number 13. Thompson nearly going for the move around the outside, and if he did, I think they would have come to blows, and may possibly have resulted in even more aerial acrobatics heading through that corner of turn 14.
Yeah, Thompson going for it here. Really unfortunate that Jesus and Thompson made some contact there. It was maybe bound to happen, but they were racing hammer and tongue. We'll see, we're going too wide into T1 here. And Thompson's going to get it done just before we get there, and Montgomery relents the position, which is probably the smart thing to do in that situation. You just cannot go too wide through T1. But let's have a quick look at this replay, see what happened with Jesus and Thompson here.
Yeah, here we go, heading off into 1 and 2 side by side, and Owens contact mid-corner. Rodriguez getting shuffled off the circuit as a result of that, taking a trip through the grass on the outskirts of turn number 2. Thompson very lucky to get away with that, it must be said, considering the nature of their contact. That could have ended an absolute disaster for the both of them. They've lost out on some time though, and Chris Montgomery is using this as a fantastic opportunity to try and pounce the driver of the 33 car, trying to go for triple 3 and end up finishing in P3 when everything is said and done from this 30-minute long race. But Thompson now running in P3 after he got a move done on Montgomery heading through turn number 7, but this fight is still heating up, and I gotta say, despite the fact that I said Rodriguez was taken out of this, he really hasn't. You can see Rodriguez, Mercedes, Green, and I can't really see Love. He's a little bit farther back in tow, but these drivers are still battling hard, and we're still going to have a fantastic fight on our hands. Coming to a white flag this time by Thortula. Gonna see that white flag in the air, and hoping to God that he does have a sort of challenge with himself and Parvin Ladar, because otherwise he's on track to take another victory this season overall and in the Spec 1 category. Marzuki, meanwhile, involved in this fight, going side by side for a few moments, with Montgomery heading off through 11 and 12. These drivers are battling oh so hard, but looking at the battle up at the front, Parvin Ladar using this opportunity to pounce on Thortulo. They're going to be side by side going down the start-finish straightaway. Tulo looks like he's going to get that move done and remain in P1. Looking right behind, though, Thompson running in 3rd, Montgomery in 4th, Marzuki and Perry battling hard. That's actually Perry and Rodriguez battling hard, heading off through 1 and 2. Rodriguez hoping to not have a repeat of what happened with himself and Thompson earlier on. DeGassis, meanwhile, going side by side with Andrew
What a
Love,
move from Love
heading
there.
off through
Whoa.
1 and 2. That was a slick move from Andrew Love, the driver of the 544 car, having some absolute stones to get that move done at the very beginning of the final lap of this race. Looking at battles up and down the field, here's a newcomer, Javier Rupelez, in the 16 car. He may have a good shot to finish on the top 20. Look at that slide from Justice heading off through turn number 2. This is not a Tokyo Drift competition. This is a Formula V race, but he's trying to go for the Tokyo Drift and going to try and remain in P20 because he's got a fight on his hands. Speaking of a fight on his hands, Parvinder Ladar has a fantastic opportunity. The Bada Bing 4-3-2 car going to try and make a move done to slip his way up into P1. Will Ladar get it done side by side, heading down this back straightaway off into turn number 11 for the final time? Will Ladar be able to get that move done? I don't believe he will be, as Tulo takes advantage of that inside line and holds on to that spot. Thompson and Montgomery, meanwhile, going side by side. Thompson with a drift coming out of turn number 11. That was slick from him. Marzuki, meanwhile, trying to slip by and get a move done on Montgomery to slip his way up into 4th. Tulo, meanwhile, about to cross the start-finish line and win this race over Parvinder Ladar, going to be victorious in the Spec 2 category. But looking at absolute pandemonium behind, this is setting up for a good photo finish. We've seen some of the drivers right behind Thompson weaving, coming to the line to round out your overall podium and finish P2 in the Spec 1 category. Montgomery, meanwhile, finishes right in tow. All of those cars between Thompson in 3rd, back to really Jason Green in 9th, were separated by about a second and a half. Awesome stuff here from the Formula V Weekend Warriors, and it's not over yet. Justice trying to get a move done side by side with Mike Lattarulo, 3 wide coming out of the corner. Justice is not a good exit coming out of the final corner. It's going to be a photo finish with himself and Rapuls, and it looks like Rapuls is going to get that move done, just barely not making his way up into the top 20 when everything is said and done, but he certainly gave it the old college try. Holy cow, Josh. We are expecting some fireworks at the end of that, and I think we got that and then some.
Yeah, absolutely. There was some wild moves there on the last lap. Great race from Adam Thompson here to hold it together here coming through this corner. Just amazing on the inside here. Defended his position super well. That move as well from Andrew Love, let's see if I can find it again, was just fantastic. What an awesome move. Great race, great last lap, just amazing.
Awesome stuff from start to finish here from the Formula V Weekend Warriors, and when everything is said and done, Thor Tulo, your winner in both the Spec 1 category and this race overall. He put on a fantastic fight. And I gotta say, credit where credit's due to the driver that finished right behind him, that being Parvinder Ladar, who takes a victory in the Spec 2 category and finishes P2 overall. Fantastic stuff from him. But looking at this move from Andrew Love, Josh, you could not contain your excitement seeing that slick move from Love heading off through 1 and 2.
Yeah, that was just great, honestly. He was four-wheel power sliding, I think, both ways there, kept the inside and stayed out front through that corner. That was just a fantastic move. Some great driving from Andrew Love there for sure, and from Adam Thompson up front as well. Great win from Thor Tulo as well. Just dominated that one from beginning to end, and a great finish for Ladar as well. I don't think we've seen him up on the podiums yet, have we, Ron?
I don't believe we've seen him on the overall podiums. May have seen him on the Spec 2 podiums earlier on this season, but he still put on one hell of a fight to end up finishing in P2. And oh my,
we have a scrum.
Dear baby, merciful Jesus. Oh my God, okay, who's upside down? That, I believe, maybe Guido Marzuki who's upside down.
Bump him over.
Okay, yeah, they're gonna bump him over, maybe. A little bit of bumper cars action when everything is said and done. Thompson. What? Oh, yeah, there's Jason Green upside down.
Oh, not a great view from his cockpit there. Oh, there we are.
What in the... Whoa, boy, that was inside of Michelle Lynn's... What?
Yikes.
There he goes. He's back. He's on his lane. Oh, no, here comes Thompson for the kill. Dear God, okay.
That was one of the better shots I've gotten in a little while there. Always great to see the guys having some fun, and then the ladies having some fun here after the race. Definitely a Weekend Warrior sort of staple thing to do here is just burn her down at the end. So always fun to watch everybody ballparking it and jumping into the rhubarb. And yeah, good stuff. Always a good group of guys, good group of ladies here who just love to have a good time, and you're seeing it right now in full effect. The guys and gals of the Formula V Weekend Warriors, they put on an exciting show, and then they give us an exciting after show.
I don't even know what to say to this.
A lot of broken race cars out here.
Gary Woolbolt having like no bodywork remaining on that race car. See, this track, I mean, considering it's basically as flat as a pancake, don't really have too many jump opportunities unless you hit the killer curves around this racetrack. So just giving us a demo derby when everything's said and done. I feel like we'll add to the comedic effect and pretend that none of this is going down, bring up the results graphic, and see all of this chaos going on with Gary Woolbolt driving a Formula Vee race car that looks like it's right for the scrap heap and going
Oh, ballparked it.
Oh, dear.
I think you may have broke the SDK here, possibly.
I think we have so many onboard. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's Jason Green back into existence. We have so many onboard cameras that we're going to have to replace after this race. But Thortula victorious when everything is said and done. Parvana Ladar going to finish right behind in P2. Adam Thompson going to round out your overall podium in third as I go through the rest of this grid, not paying any attention to all the BS chaos that's going on in the back of shot. Chris Montgomery going to finish in P4. Guido Morzuki going to round out your overall top 5. Jason Perry in 6th. Jesus Rodriguez. Pretty good recovery drive, especially after that moment with himself and Thompson. He ends up in 7th. Matthew Merced going to be the second of the Spec 2 finishers in P8 overall. Jason Green in 9th. Andrew Love in 10th. Alan DeGassis, Jim Brewster, Michael McConnell, Jeff Jacobson, and David Fitzgerald going to round out your top 15. Brad Cathcart, the Australian driver, the 905, going to finish in P16. Brian Szynski ends up in 17th. Hopefully a lot less sweaty than was 1 week ago at the runoffs. Racing inside a trailer, his brother Dan Szynski finishes right behind in P18. Michael Lattarulo finishes in 19th. Joshua Justice with that hard side-by-side fight towards the end, going to round out your overall top 20. Javier Repules, the newcomer to the series in the number 16 car, going to finish in 21st. Hank Mellon 22nd. Gary Woolbolt in 23rd. Nick Tulo in P24. Wayne Buttermore in 25th. Joshua Flores in 26th. Jason Grider in 27th. Matthias Marin in P28. A lot of these drivers towards the end of the running order had some sort of major issue befall them. Marin was one of them, along with Heemskirk, who ended this race upside down. Travis Rail, Simon Mayer, and Russell Telker running at the 32 cars classified when everything is said and done from this race. And after those bizarre sights on the back straightaway at this racetrack, Josh, I think I'm going to let you handle the interview with the former boss man himself, that being Adam, and this is going to be some colorful. This is going to be some colorful stuff.
Right on, yep. Yeah, if you want to bring him in for me there, Ron. Adam, what a race out there today. Some great moves from you, some great moves from your compatriots out there. Tell us how you did it, man. That looked like it was a scrum and a half. Pretty much the whole race with you guys. You were just either under pressure or applying pressure there. Tell us what you saw.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Before I do anything, I haven't looked at the replay yet, but I do want to apologize to Jesus if I got into him. The car started washing out a little bit, and there was, I mean, I didn't think I was making contact with him, but I felt my steering go no force feedback, which means I'm understeering, and I had no idea why, and then I saw I was into the right front of Jesus, so I apologize for that, man. But other than that, it was a lot of fun. Chris Montgomery and I had a battle on the last lap going into that final chicane. I am glad he lifted out of that because I got extremely loose going into the first part of that chicane, and that would have collected him if he didn't lift. So great race, Chris, and I'm sorry for doing that as well.
Yeah, no, that was actually, from our perspective, that looked like a great move, and we did see your car wiggle a little bit there because you're really center in there. And yes, Montgomery, you know, being the cool head that he is, I think he saw that happening there, and he lived to fight another day, or both of you lived to fight another day. So some great aggressive driving out there today. Adam, is there anybody you'd like to thank at all?
Well, of course, you guys. Joshua taking over the racing line on Tuesday nights for a few weeks, so thanks for doing that. And obviously, shout out to Ron for becoming starting to become a staple of SMB, Ron. So thank you so much for everything you do for slow motion broadcasting. And Zippy, obviously, with the new owner, it seems like he's trying to make some changes here, and it looks like they're all for the best. So I'm super stoked to see where SMB goes with Zippy at the helm. And then obviously Stevie Ray. I don't know if I should say it right now or not, but I think Stevie may be planning a trip to come here to Northern Nevada next weekend. We're going to hang out, so we're going to get some pictures, me and Stevie, screwing around up here in Northern Nevada. Should be a lot of fun. And obviously to all the FV guys, Jim Brewster, Michelle Lynn, Guido. Hi, Guido. And yeah, the Weekend Warriors as a whole is just, man, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, excellent. Things are going pretty good here at SMB for sure. As you said, there are our new boss is taking over things really well. Obviously, we miss you on the call and miss you in the background here, Adam, but we're going to take the reins as best we can for you and keep it going until you can come back and help us out again. So great good job on the third place today. We'll be seeing you again next week. Going to be around for the races tomorrow as well on SRF and FF?
I think we will, Josh. I think we're going to have to... staple remover from Ron. Very nice, Ron. But yes, I should be around, and I got to get some practice here, Joshua. I think we've got some unfinished business after last week.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I just couldn't catch you there in some traffic last week, and you know what? These tracks coming into this week are not really my strongest one. So hopefully, me and you can meet up on track and have some good battles tomorrow as well. But great race today. Always love covering the V's. Good job up there in the front, and we'll see you next week, Adam.
Thanks, guys. See you then.
And that right there was Adam Thompson, who seemed very amused about the fact that I sent him a staple remover after he called me a staple here of SNB. But a staple here in the Formula V Weekend Warriors, and a driver who takes his third overall victory of the season is Thor Tulo, who's now going to be joining us in the commentary booth. And now, Thor, we've had chat with you a lot thus far this season. Been a pretty wild season for you, but gonna take your third victory overall here at Oschersleben. Talk us through it, man.
Yeah, honestly, I can't be any happier. It's been a really rough few weeks in the series, so I'm really happy to be able to be talking with you guys again. It was a very intense first corner with, unfortunately, a bit of a coming together with Steve, and I'm really sorry that had to happen. But after that, it was pretty smooth sailing. It was, Parvinder was behind me, but I know he's a very sensible driver. And yeah, we just, yeah, it was nice and simple. I liked it.
Yeah, overall, pretty simple day from you. I don't think you and Parvinder were trading blows that much throughout that race. And outside that drama at the very beginning, looked like a pretty clean day from you, despite the fact that it looks like there's a little bit of damage on your race car, at least according to the replay that I'm seeing from Josh right now. But overall, pretty clean day from you, and after the troubles that you ran into at Navarro 1 week ago, must be pretty happy about the result today to try and kickstart that fight in the championship with yourself and Jason Green.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jason's been doing great for these past couple of weeks. I wanted to maybe claw back a little bit of points, you know, and yeah, he's a great driver. He'll be consistent every single week, so yeah, really important to get the good results in and try and catch him.
Well, that victory is certainly going to help you out a whole lot when it comes to that Spec 1 championship fight. Slowly approaching the halfway mark of this season. In fact, I think the next race of the season at Rudskogen, the 15-minute mark of that, is going to officially hit the halfway mark of this season's championship. So heading into that race at Rudskogen in 1 week's time, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, Rudskogen's a track that I've always really, really liked. I believe I still hold the world record around there, so I'm hoping for similar results, you know, and yeah, just really excited to be racing with this bunch of people again.
Well, we are going to hold you to that world record standard and wait to see you lap the field at Rudskogen in 1 week's time. But Thor, thank you for joining us in the commentary booth. And before we let you go, to anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Just want to thank my team, Bravo Esports, and to Kellen Parr, who's watching right now. I love you, man. And to Slow Motion Broadcasting, you guys. You're doing a good job.
Alrighty, there you go, Thor. Thank you for the kind words. Congratulations on the victory, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And that right there was Thor Tula victorious here at Motorsports Arena Oschersleben, a track where we were expecting an odd brand of racing for sure around a racetrack, which is a real oddity in the world of motorsports. But Josh, I don't know about you, but I'm certainly not disappointed with the action that we saw here today.
No, that was an absolutely great race. To be honest, I was kind of hoping it was going to be that way. This place usually races pretty well. It's a bit of a difficult track. It's a bit hard to wrap your mind around, but if you get in there and you get the practice done and you put the laps down so you can memorize all these corners and get them right, it's a great track, and it always races pretty well. So really happy to see all the action out there this afternoon, and our winners, great job.
And we're going to be heading to a racetrack like Rudskogen, which our old buddy Charles Bushell once described as very similar to Oschersleben. So hoping for a very similar style of racing to that one week. Son, what are your thoughts heading into that one, Josh?
Yeah, Rudskogen's actually a pretty great track. I've only had the pleasure of racing there once or twice, but it does race pretty good. It's another one that's fairly technical, and you're really leaning on the tire a lot around there. So it should be a pretty interesting race from these guys. I think Charles is probably right, where we have a bit of a similar feeling track there. So yeah, we should have a very similar race there, I believe.
And we've also got some other fantastic tracks that we're going to be visiting throughout the rest of this Weekend Warriors Formula Vee season. They'll be running at tracks like Rudskogen 1 week's time, Summit Point, Zandvoort, Indianapolis, Lime Rock Park, Lebanon, Laguna Seca, and Okayama. Also got a fantastic schedule of broadcasts to look forward to here on SMB. Sorry to put that on you there, Josh. I was just about to go through the fantastic schedule of races that we have from the rest of the Weekend Warriors world, because we've got some pretty good stuff coming up tomorrow. The Formula Ford Weekend Warriors going to be running at the Hungaroring for the 5th race of that season. Meanwhile, the Spec Racer Ford is going to be shadowing the NASCAR world and running at the Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval layout. A little bit different than what's being used by NASCAR this weekend, but can't really complain about that because the reconfiguration that NASCAR decided to do for this year's Cup race is absolutely abysmal. I can't even come up with the words to describe the way that they reconfigured that track. But the Spec Racer Fords always put on a pretty good show, and at the good version of the Charlotte Motor Speedway road course, that's going to be another good show in just 1 day's time. But as for this broadcast today, for the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, that will just about do it here at Motorsports Arena Oschersleben. So for myself, Ron Maunz, and Josh Wilkie working the comms and the cams with me on this broadcast today on SMB, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not-too-distant future.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and we need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.